weather dependent. Some of us may know that the USDA updated their hardiness map. And this is really based off that growing degree day. So they're going to be, they'll probably end up hatching a little bit earlier this year.
What is it saying now, May 18th area?
Well, so this one, this was based for 2023. So it's saying about May 19th or 17th and 19th, but you may be seeing earlier May. And it's, do you have postings on when that egg hatch happens?
Yeah, I've seen it as early as like late April. So it is very variable, but usually that's that early May that we start seeing them.
Yep. And it's very weather dependent. They're responsive to the heat. That is each day above, I think, 45 or 50 degrees. So when we're seeing a lot of snow outside, that slows down the generation for them to hatch. Let's see, let's go back to, okay, so when I go out to a client's property and survey, I'm more looking at a qualitative approach. I'm looking at, is there a lot of egg masses per tree? Is the tree, how much of an issue is it? And going off the history that I get with my clients. And then we consider, all right, do we really need to treat this tree? Maybe we can fertilize it and encourage good health and do other practices such as unburying a root flare and just boosting the tree's health to survive it. But if it's, if there's a lot of viable egg masses that I see, and it's in an environment where it's going to be a nuisance or the tree is stressed enough, I'll use a qualitative approach. So I'm not counting it, but there's a mutual understanding that maybe we ought to treat just this one tree and we can provide an injection for it. But if you're in a forest setting, you can just walk out there and when you're dealing with acres and acres and acres, it's probably better to take a qualitative approach. I don't typically deal with this. There is a QR code here. This is all from Penn State University. So when you're surveying and you're doing a quantitative approach, you're not going to walk through an acre and count every single egg mass. You would lose days or months, and they'd probably be hatched, and you haven't figured anything out. So the survey with Penn State recommendation is survey a quarter of an acre. And to do that, you do an 18.6 radius. So 18.6 feet in front of me, 18.6 feet behind me. So roughly, what is that? A roughly 33 foot diameter circle. And that's going to be 1/40th of an acre. And in that circle, preferably you can measure it and mark it so you know where that boundary is. You're going to go out in that circle and you're going to look for every single egg mass in there, and you're going to start tallying. And how many egg masses you find in that circle that you're surveying, you times it by 40, because that's 1/40th of an acre. So we got to times that by 40, and that's going to give you a very quick way to say how many eggs are there per acre. So there's an example here. There's 25 egg masses in that 18.6 foot radius circle that you counted, right? Well, you times that by 40, and you have roughly 1,000 egg masses per acre. You didn't walk that whole acre to count 1,000 eggs. I won't. You can if you want, have fun. But that's a very quick way to look at a small area, round it up, get your number. And then they have this nice chart in this link here from the QR that says, what's your anticipated damage with how many viable eggs per area. So it's saying mortality. Again, it doesn't mean like the whole forest is going to die, but it means that there's going to probably be a little bit of death in like younger trees. There might be some dieback. There's going to be a very high amount of defoliation, if not a lot of defoliation. But you get under 750, you're only looking at about 30% of the canopy potentially being lost, and it goes downhill from there. In area around a home, from what we've gathered, is around 250 egg masses per acre. Granted, the home, living lawn area that you mow takes up a lot of the tree canopy, but 250 in that that acreage, that becomes a very nuisance problem where you have that raining frost, the droppings, that starts making that area unlivable if they can't get used to it. Can't judge. Is there any questions on this surveying?
So on the back of this pamphlet, they've also got a correction for old versus new masses.
Mm-hmm.
Is that,
Yeah, so that's actually part of this same survey.
Yep. So yeah, I forgot to mention, there's, with this survey, in that when you're doing your count in that designated area, you can compare the old egg masses to the new, as long as you are positive that it's an old versus new, and it can give you an idea of whether the population is going up or down, depending on the ratio. And I'm assuming that calculation that kind of helped depict that is in there? Perfect.
And that's also to say, like, you know, if you're counting, trap looks like we've just wrapped a piece of burlap and hung it with a piece of twine. This was a 3-foot roll that I just cut with the utility knife down the middle. So we've got about 18 inches of burlap. Caterpillars are hide up in here, and then you come out every day, lift it up, you know, get a brush and brush them into your soapy water or what have you. The other option is using tape, duct tape, and so all you'll do with that is get a little bit of the sticky part on the tree and then flip it over so you're not duct taping your whole tree. And then you can wrap it a few more times to get a thicker band, and they'll stick to the duct tape a little bit, but you can add things like Vaseline. There's commercial products like Tanglefoot or Catchmaster, I think is what Home Depot's brand, that you can just apply directly to that tape. This caterpillars get stuck in that, and then, you know, you can clean it off, or they'll just die, you know, stuck to that tape. So that's another method for capturing them before they get up to into your foliage. Again, these are pretty, you know, labor-intensive management options, but they're good for specimen trees. Your giant oak tree, you know, that you really want to protect. These are good options for that sort of, you know, for that sort of tree.
The one thing I'll mention is those Tanglefoot products and Vaseline. There is a very simple to make mistake where you don't put the tape on and people think they can apply it straight to the bark. Well, sometimes it has petroleum products that can actually penetrate the bark and stress the tree out. Not only that, is that band that you make, you're going to be looking at that band for decades until that bark flakes off. So applying that tape, you want to make sure it's tight. If there's a lot of furrows, you can stuff cotton balls to block the path of gypsy moth from going underneath. But that tape is important to make sure that, you know, you're not getting that product on the bark of the tree itself, because once it binds to the bark, it's there until the bark eventually flakes off.
Yeah, and so one of the recommendations that's in your pamphlet there is leave about 2 inches of, you know, tape or whatever you're applying to the bark, so that product doesn't dribble down onto your, you know, tree. Leave a little bit of a cushion area for dripping.
Great, thanks, Brian. We're going to take a look at a couple of the sample egg sacs that we found on our survey yesterday. It should be noted that when Ben and I were walking through the woods, actually it was fairly difficult to find them, so we have some binoculars that will help with seeing them in the tops of the trees. But to get a good example of where they are, where you can find them, we have a bunch that are on the side of the building here. Some older ones, you can kind of feel how spongy, flaky they are. And we do actually have a new egg sac that you can kind of test the firmness on that to kind of get an idea of what the new egg sacs look and feel like. So the new one is just on this side of the building. We can all kind of take a look at that and then head out.
That can penetrate the skin, kind of similar to fiberglass, but it doesn't linger like fiberglass, so it can cause an irritation like that.
Okay,
Gotcha.
so I'm not gonna touch them.
I'm not.
You convinced me.
But yeah, it's right here. There's a few dead caterpillars as well. They can touch it for firmness. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The,
So this is where we're going to be doing our sample plots. Is basically into the woods that way. it goes until I believe there's a trail on the opposite side that'll boundary it on the north end, and then on the west there'll be a wetland, so you'll know not to go in there. We'll be doing the sample plots with the 18.6 foot strings that you guys have. I'll have this to kind of measure things as well. But basically, we'll be looking at the trees. There's plenty of oaks through here, which is going to be the dominant species across this kind of woodland, and the preferred host of Spongy Moth as well. So we're going to do our best to try and find what we can and get a good measurement of what kind of outbreak is happening here on the site. So if you want to grab a partner, it'll be easier to spread out the string that way and count out the trees. So I'll see if Ben wants to help me out with starting one.
Is the wetland less likely to have that because
Not necessarily, it's part of the virus.
Alright.
I know, but the virus is on. Yes. So we'll be counting the egg masses on every tree that falls into that circle. So we'll be starting with one like this, just looking up and down the tree. This one's dead, but it can still have egg masses that are laid on it. Most often, you're going to find them on the undersides of branches, but they can be found all the way up and down the tree, which is why the binoculars are so helpful. So, when we're looking at a tree to find the egg masses, so kind of in short, the tell you what we told you part of this, we have a lot of options for managing spongy moth. It just depends on what kind of level the infestation is at. We went over the life cycle of that, so we know when to look for these things. Right now is a great time of year between like March and April to find the egg sacs before they hatch. We have some treatment options available through Bartlett. We have some forest management options available through the Forestry Assistance Program. And we did some sample plots, so you can do a whole bunch of that sort of work on your own, get an idea of like what's out there, and that way we can get you connected with the best resources to help you out. I do want to give another big thanks to the Ebersol Center for hosting us. They were very generous with hosting us in this facility. And I want to thank our sponsors, the Michigan Tree Farm Committee. They provided the funding for the snacks as well as some door prizes, which unfortunately didn't make it for this event. But we can.
Wait a minute.
That's what I forgot to do at the beginning, was do the drawing part of that. But we will be doing a random drawing of who won those door prizes for some binoculars to help with your spongy moth surveying. So those will be, you'll receive a email if you have won that shortly after this event. So again, I want to thank you all for coming, because this is showing us that this is an important thing that the community is worried about, and that we want to provide our educational and assessment services for. So
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.